The great hall of the Galactic Council stretched like a cathedral made of crystal and light. 47 different species sat in their assigned seats, each one watching the small human woman standing alone in the center. Dr. Elena Vasquez kept her back straight and her chin up, even though she knew what was coming. The Altarian High Counselor Zethkri rose from his floating throne. His blue skin shimmered under the artificial lights, and his forearms moved in the ritual gestures of formal judgment. When he spoke, his voice filled the enormous space without effort. "We gathered today to discuss the human problem," Zethkri said. "For too long, this species has brought chaos to our peaceful galaxy." Elena felt her jaw tighten, but she stayed silent. Earth's government had sent her here to defend humanity, but she already knew the outcome. The Council had made their decision weeks ago. This was just theater. The first witness stepped forward. Delegate Vexhai of the Zephyrian Republic moved with the grace of his bird-like species. His feathers were a brilliant green, and his large eyes never blinked as he spoke. 3 years ago, my people faced civil war. Vexhai began. Our planet was dying. Cities burned. Millions suffered. We hired human mercenaries because no other species would help us. Elena remembered that conflict. Earth soldiers had volunteered for a mission that everyone said was hopeless. The Zephyrian rebels had better weapons and more numbers. Most military experts predicted the Republic would fall within months. The humans saved us, Vexhai continued, but the way they fought... He shuddered, making his feathers rustle. They never retreated. When their weapons broke, they used rocks. When they ran out of ammunition, they fought with their bare hands. They turned impossible battles into victories through pure stubbornness. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Elena felt a flicker of pride, but Vexhai wasn't finished. They taught our soldiers to think like them, to never give up, to fight dirty when fighting clean wasn't enough. Yes, we won the war, but we became something different, something more violent. The humans changed us. The next witness was even worse. A Vorthak representative rolled forward on its crystalline body, speaking through the universal translator in a voice like breaking glass. Humans worked in our mining colonies on Kepler 7. The crystal being said. The radiation there kills most species within days. The toxic atmosphere dissolves Altarian skin. Even we Vorthak, who are born in such environments, struggle to survive there. Elena knew about Kepler 7. Earth's miners had volunteered for that job too when no one else would take it. The pay was good, but the danger was enormous. The humans not only survived, the Vorthak continued. They thrived. They built shelters from scrap metal. They created air filters from mining equipment. They found ways to process food that should have been poison to them. In 6 months, they had turned our most dangerous mining site into our most productive. The crystal being paused, its internal lights pulsing with what Elena recognized as distress. But they changed our workers too. Suddenly, every Vorthak wanted to try the human methods. They started taking risks we never would have taken before. 3 of our people died attempting human-style modifications to their equipment. The humans saved our mining operation, but they also infected our people with their reckless creativity. More witnesses followed. A Centaurian diplomat described how human traders had revolutionized their economy by introducing the concept of calculated risks, a Keth. Representatives spoke about human scientists who had solved century-old problems by simply ignoring the rules. That said, those problems were impossible. Each story was the same. Humans helped. Humans succeeded where others failed, and in the process, humans changed everything around them. Finally, Counselor Zethkri gestured for silence. The great hall fell quiet enough to hear the hum of the life support systems. "Dr. Vasquez," the High Counselor said, "you have heard the testimony. How do you respond to these charges?" Elena stepped forward. She had practiced this speech for weeks, but now the words felt different on her tongue. "Honored counselors," she began, "everything you've heard is true. Humans don't give up easily. We find solutions where others see only problems. We adapt to environments that would kill other species. We take risks that seem insane to more cautious minds." She looked around the hall, meeting as many eyes as she could. "But you speak of these things as if they were crimes. When the Zephyrians asked for help, who answered? When the Vorthak needed workers for their deadliest mines, who volunteered? When the Centaurians wanted to expand their trade networks, who showed them how?" "That's exactly the problem," interrupted Counselor Nalthera of the Hegemony. Her insect-like features clicked with agitation. "You don't understand consequences. Every time humans help, they spread their chaotic thinking. Our galaxy has been peaceful for 3,000 years because we understand limits. We know when to stop pushing. We accept when something cannot be changed. But you never ask if something should be changed, Elena shot back. The Zephyrian Republic was going to fall. Millions would have died. The Vorthak mines were failing, and their economy was collapsing. The Centaurians were trapped in a trade system that kept them poor for generations. We didn't cause these problems. We just refused to accept them as permanent. Zethkri raised one of his 4 hands for silence. The Galactic Council has maintained peace through careful balance. Every species has its place. Every world knows its role. We have systems that have worked for millennia. And those systems were failing, Elena said. You just didn't want to admit it. The High Counselor's blue skin darkened with anger. Enough. The Council has reached its decision. Elena felt her heart sink, but she kept her expression neutral. She had known this was coming, but hearing it still hurt. Humanity is hereby expelled from the Galactic Council, Zethkri announced. All human colonies in Council space must be evacuated within 30 standard cycles. All trade agreements are null and void. All star charts showing Council territories will be confiscated. Earth and all human settlements are banned from entering Council space indefinitely. The hall erupted in noise. Some delegates seemed pleased, while others looked uncomfortable. Elena noticed that several younger representatives appeared openly upset by the decision. Zethkri continued speaking over the noise. Humanity poses a fundamental threat to galactic stability. Your species refuses to accept the natural order. You encourage others to question systems that have maintained peace for thousands of years. You are a virus of discontent that spreads wherever you go. Elena felt anger rising in her chest, but she forced herself to stay calm. She had one last chance to speak, and she wasn't going to waste it on emotion. Counselor Zethkri, she said, her voice carrying clearly through the hall. You're making a mistake. Humans don't cause change, we reveal it. Every problem we've solved was already there waiting. Every limitation we've broken was already cracking. You think we're dangerous because we refuse to accept things as they are? She took a deep breath and looked around the hall one more time. You're right, we are dangerous, but not in the way you think. We're dangerous because we prove that things can be better. We're dangerous because we show other species that they don't have to settle for the way things have always been. And you're especially right. About one thing, we don't give up. Elena straightened her shoulders and delivered her final words to the Council. You want us gone because you think that will make your problems disappear. But the problems were here before we arrived, and they'll be here after we leave. The difference is that now some of your people know those problems can be solved. You can banish us from your space, Counselor. But you can't banish the ideas we've shared. You can't make other species forget that change is possible. She paused, letting her words sink in. 30 cycles, you said. That's more time than we need. Humans are very good at starting over. And when we do, you'll regret this decision. Not because we'll seek revenge, but because you'll see what you could have become if you'd been brave enough to change with us. Elena turned and walked toward the exit, her footsteps echoing in the suddenly silent hall. Behind her, she could hear whispered conversations starting among the younger delegates. Some were already questioning whether the Council had made the right choice. As the great doors closed behind her, Elena allowed herself a small smile. The Council thought they were ending the human story. Instead, they had just written the first chapter of something much bigger. 18 months had passed since the banishment, and Admiral Marcus Chen stood on the bridge of the Pathfinder, staring at a star map that showed nothing but empty space. The ship was humanity's newest deep scout vessel, built from salvaged alien technology and human determination. It wasn't pretty, but it worked. Status report, Chen said to his navigation officer. Lieutenant Park checked her instruments. We're 3 weeks past the furthest point any human ship has traveled, sir. Still no sign of habitable systems, Chen nodded grimly. The exodus from Council space had been brutal. 30 cycles to evacuate hundreds of human colonies, millions of people, and decades of infrastructure. Some colonies had been abandoned entirely when there wasn't enough time or ships to move everyone. Earth's government had managed to relocate most of the population to the Outer Rim territories. But resources were running dangerously low. The Galactic Council had kept their word about cutting off all trade. No more exotic materials for Earth's industries. No more access to the advanced medical technology that had extended human lifespans. No more star charts showing safe routes through space. Humanity was truly alone for the first time in over a century. Sir, called Commander Sarah Torres from the sensor station. I'm picking up something strange on long-range scanners. Chen walked over to look at Torres's display. She was one of the best scouts in the fleet, with an eye for details that others missed. If she said something was strange, it was worth investigating. What do you see? Chen asked. Torres pointed at a cluster of readings on her screen. There's a massive nebula about 6 light-years ahead, but the energy signatures don't match any natural phenomenon I've seen before. The gravimetric readings are all wrong. How wrong? Like the nebula is being held together by artificial gravity fields, Torres said. And there are structured mass readings inside it. Lots of them. Chen felt his pulse quicken. After months of empty space, this was the first sign of anything interesting they'd found. Set course for the nebula. Maximum sustainable speed. 3 days later, the Pathfinder reached the edge of what Torres had started calling the Kepler drift. Up close, it was even more impressive than the sensors had suggested. The nebula stretched for dozens of light years, glowing with colors that seemed to shift and change as they watched. My God, whispered Dr. James Wu from the science station. Wu was a quantum physicist who had volunteered for the expedition when Earth's universities lost their funding. The energy patterns in there. It's like the entire nebula is one giant machine. Can we navigate it safely? Chen asked. Torres studied her readings. The gravity fields are stable but complex. It'll be like flying through a 3-dimensional maze. One wrong turn and we could be crushed or thrown into subspace. But you can do it? Torres grinned. Give me 6 hours to map the entry corridor and I'll get us inside. The journey into the Kepler drift took 12 hours of careful navigation. Torres guided them through twisting gravity currents and past energy barriers that could have torn the ship apart. But gradually the view ahead began to clear. What they found inside took their breath away. Are you recording this? Chen asked Wu. Every sensor we have is active, Wu replied, his voice full of wonder. Spread out before them were dozens of star systems, each one nestled in a pocket of clear space within the nebula. But these weren't natural systems. The stars had been arranged in perfect geometric patterns, and the planets orbited in ways that defied normal physics. Those worlds, Torres said, checking her readings again. At least 20 of them are showing as habitable. Earth-like atmosphere, liquid water, stable gravity. And look at the asteroid fields, Wu added. The mineral concentrations are incredible. Rare elements that the Council charges fortunes for, just floating in space waiting to be harvested. Chen activated the ship's communication system. This is Admiral Chen to Earth Command. We've found something, sending full sensor data now. But the real discovery came when they approached the nearest planet. Torres brought the ship into orbit, and immediately their sensors detected structures on the surface. Massive buildings that stretched for kilometers, all abandoned but remarkably well preserved. Sir, Torres said, her voice tight with excitement. I'm reading artificial structures all over this planet. And they're old. Really old. The landing party consisted of Chen, Torres, Wu, and a squad of Marines. They took a shuttle down to the largest structure, a pyramid-like building that rose from the center of what had once been a vast city. The architecture was unlike anything they'd seen before. Clean lines and smooth surfaces that seemed to grow out of the ground, rather than being built on top of it. The materials were unfamiliar too. A sort of crystalline metal that felt warm to the touch and seemed to pulse with its own inner light. The dating scans are coming back, Wu said as they entered the pyramid. This place is at least 50,000 years old, maybe older. That predates the Galactic Council by 30,000 years, Torres added. Inside the pyramid, they found rooms filled with strange devices, control panels covered with symbols that seemed to shift when they weren't looking directly at them, screens that flickered to life when humans approached, showing star maps and technical diagrams. But it was Wu who made the crucial discovery. As he approached one of the control panels, the symbols suddenly rearranged themselves into patterns he could almost understand. It's responding to me, Wu said, his voice full of wonder. Not to my equipment, to me personally. Like it's reading my brain patterns. Chen and Torres tried approaching the same panel, but nothing happened. When Wu stepped close again, the screen lit up with new information. It's some kind of neural interface, Wu explained. But it's selective. It only responds to certain types of brain activity. Over the following days, they explored more buildings and made more discoveries. The ancient civilization had built technology that was completely different from anything the Galactic Council used. Instead of relying on rare exotic materials, these devices tapped directly into quantum fields and dark matter. resources that were everywhere in the universe, but that no current civilization knew how to use. More importantly, Wu discovered that humans could operate this technology. Not all humans, but a significant percentage. Something about human neural patterns made them compatible with the ancient interfaces in ways that other species couldn't match. It's like they built this technology specifically for minds that think like ours. Wu explained to Chen over dinner in their makeshift camp. Minds that don't accept limitations, minds that keep pushing until they find a solution. Chen thought about the implications. How much of this technology do you think still works? Most of it, from what I can tell. These devices are incredibly durable. And there's something else. Wu hesitated, then continued. I've been analyzing the quantum patterns in the nebula itself. I think the whole thing is a preservation system. The ancient civilization didn't just abandon this place, they left it here waiting for someone who could use it. Waiting for 50,000 years? Time means different things at quantum scales, Wu said. For a civilization advanced enough to build all this, 50,000 years might seem like a reasonable wait. Torres joined them from her latest scouting mission. Admiral, I've mapped 17 more planets in this system alone. All of them have ruins. All of them have intact technology. And I'm picking up similar patterns from the other star systems in the nebula. Chen stood and walked to the edge of their camp, looking up at the alien stars arranged in their impossible patterns. Behind him, Wu and Torres continued discussing their discoveries, but Chen's mind was elsewhere. 18 months ago, humanity had been cast out of galactic civilization. They'd been told they were too dangerous, too chaotic, too unwilling to accept the way things were. The Council had expected them to fade away into the empty spaces between the stars. Instead, they'd found this. An entire hidden region of space filled with habitable worlds and technology, beyond anything the Council possessed. Technology that only humans could use. Chen activated his communicator. This is Admiral Chen to Earth Command. Cancel the resource shortage protocols. We're not refugees anymore. He looked back at Wu and Torres, both of them bent over alien devices that responded to human thought like they'd been waiting for it. Tell the evacuation fleet to change course for the Kepler drift, Chen continued. We're going home. A new home that's exactly what we need it to be. As if in response to his words, the ancient building around them pulsed with light, its crystalline walls glowing brighter. The technology was waking up after 50,000 years of sleep, responding to human hands and human minds. The Galactic Council had wanted to banish humanity to empty space. Instead, they'd driven them to find something that would change everything. Chen smiled. The real work was just beginning. 5 years after the banishment, the human domain was no longer just a dream. Minister Elena Santos stood on the observation deck of New Geneva Station, watching construction ships finish the latest quantum gate. The massive ring-shaped structure would connect this system to 12 others, creating a network that spanned half the Kepler drift. The Centauri link goes online in 6 hours, reported Captain Lisa Rodriguez, who had become Santos's chief of transportation. That'll give us direct access to the heavy manufacturing systems. Santos nodded, but her attention was focused on something else. Through the transparent aluminum windows, she could see the Defiance taking shape in the orbital shipyard. The massive vessel was unlike anything humanity had built before, a fusion of ancient quantum technology and human engineering philosophy. Status report on the flagship? Santos asked. Lord Admiral Chen says she'll be ready for trials within the month, Rodriguez replied. The dark matter containment systems are stable, and the quantum armor is responding well to human control interfaces. Santos smiled at the title. Marcus Chen had been elected Lord Admiral by the Fleet Council, a position that combined military leadership with civilian oversight. It was a very human solution to the problem of command structure, practical rather than elegant, effective rather than traditional. The human domain had evolved into something that would have horrified the Galactic Council. Instead of the rigid hierarchies and carefully maintained species barriers that characterized Council space, the domain operated on merit and results. Humans from Earth worked alongside humans born in space. Former Council species who had defected worked side by side with people who had never seen an alien world. And there had been defectors, more than Santos had expected. Speaking of aliens, Rodriguez said, checking her tablet, the Vorthak delegation arrives tomorrow. They're bringing a full mining consortium. Santos raised an eyebrow. How many? 3,000 individuals plus their families. They want to establish permanent colonies in the domain. It wasn't the first time. Over the past 2 years, entire communities from Council Space had requested asylum in the domain. The crystalline Vorthak were the latest, but they'd been preceded by groups of young Zephyrians, dissident Altarian scientists, and even a few Centaurian trade families. They all said the same thing. The domain offered opportunities that didn't exist in Council Space. The chance to advance based on ability rather than species. The freedom to take risks and try new ideas. The possibility of building something better rather than just maintaining what already existed. The Council was not pleased. Santos's communicator chimed with an incoming priority message. She recognized the encryption signature immediately. Elena Vasquez, now serving as the domain's Secretary of External Affairs. Minister Santos. Vasquez's voice came through clearly despite the quantum encryption. We have a situation developing on the Council border. Santos frowned. What kind of situation? 3 Council patrol ships intercepted a refugee convoy trying to reach domain space. They're demanding the return of the defectors and threatening to fire on our escort vessels. Which escort vessels? The New Horizon and her squadron. Captain Al-Rashid is requesting permission to engage if the Council ships open fire. Santos closed her eyes for a moment. Captain Zara Al-Rashid was one of their best officers, but she was also exactly the kind of human that made the Council nervous. Al-Rashid had been born on a mining world, raised in zero gravity, and trained in the brutal fighting schools of the Outer Rim. She was brilliant, fearless, and absolutely committed to protecting anyone who asked for domain asylum. She was also completely incapable of backing. Down from a fight. Tell Captain Al-Rashid to maintain position, but not to fire unless fired upon, Santos said. And get me a direct link to Lord Admiral Chen. Rodriguez was already working on the connection. Within moments, Chen's face appeared on the main display. Behind him, Santos could see the bridge of the Defiance, its control panels glowing with the warm light of ancient technology. You heard about the border incident? Chen asked without preamble. Just now. What's your assessment? Chen's expression was grim. The Council is testing us. They want to see if we'll fight to protect our people, or if we'll fold when they apply pressure. And what do you recommend? We fight, Chen said simply. Not because we want to, but because if we don't, every defector community in Council Space will know they can't count on us. We'll lose our most valuable allies. Santos understood the logic, but she also understood the consequences. The domain's military was growing stronger every day, but they weren't ready for a full war with the Council. Not yet. How long before the Defiance is operational? She asked. 2 weeks for full systems integration, but if you need firepower now, we can launch her with basic systems active. Santos made her decision. Do it. Take the Defiance to the border, but don't engage unless they force your hand. Sometimes just showing up is enough. 6 hours later, the Defiance dropped out of quantum space at the edge of domain territory. The massive vessel dwarfed the Council patrol ships, its dark hull crackling with barely contained energy fields. Ancient technology merged with human engineering had created something that looked like a predator made of starlight and shadow. Captain Al-Rashid's voice came over the communication channel, reporting to Chen. The Council ships are holding position, Lord Admiral, but they're not backing down. Chen studied the tactical display, 3 Council vessels against 1 domain dreadnought, and 4 escort ships. On paper, it should have been an easy victory for the domain, but Chen knew that easy victories often led to longer wars. Open a channel to the Council commander, Chen ordered. A hegemony officer appeared on the main screen, her insect features clicking with agitation. I am Commander Vextel of the Council Border Patrol. You are in violation of quarantine protocols. This is Lord Admiral Chen of the human domain, Chen replied calmly. You are threatening civilians under our protection. That's an act of war. Those civilians are Council citizens who have been infected with human chaos thinking, Vextel responded. They must be returned for proper rehabilitation. Chen felt his temper rising, but he kept his voice level. Commander, those people requested asylum in the domain. They're here voluntarily. We don't return people against their will. Your species has no concept of proper order, Vextal said. You corrupt everything you touch. These citizens must be cleansed of your influence. Commander, Chen said, his voice taking on a harder edge. You have exactly 10 minutes to withdraw from domain space. After that, I will consider your continued presence an invasion. Bextal's mandibles clicked rapidly. You dare threaten the Galactic Council? One ship against the combined might of 47 species? Chen smiled, and for the first time Vextal seemed to notice the massive vessel behind him. The Defiance was nothing like council ships with their elegant curves and decorative flourishes. This was a machine built for war, its every line designed for function over form. Commander, Chen said softly, take a good look at my ship, then ask yourself if you really want to find out what happens when humans stop being polite. For a long moment the channel was silent. Then Vextal's image flickered and disappeared. Minutes later, the three council ships changed course and retreated into their own space. The refugee convoy completed its journey to domain space without further incident. 3,000 more beings seeking the freedom to build better lives. 3,000 more reasons for the council to fear what humanity was becoming. Back on New Geneva Station, Santos watched the news feeds from council space. Protests were breaking out on a dozen worlds. Young beings of various species were demanding the same opportunities they saw in the domain. Some council governments were calling for military action against the human plague. Others were quietly sending diplomatic inquiries about trade agreements. Dr. James Wu joined Santos on the observation deck, carrying a datapad full of technical reports. The ancient technology integration is accelerating, he said. We've got quantum gates connecting 15 systems now, and the manufacturing capacity is growing exponentially. How long before we're truly independent? Santos asked. Wu considered the question. Economically, we're already there. We don't need anything from council space anymore. Militarily, another year, maybe two, and we'll be able to match their combined fleet strength. Santos nodded, but her thoughts were elsewhere. Independence was just the first step. The real question was what came next. James, she said, what do you think the ancient civilization would have wanted? Why did they leave all this technology here? Wu was quiet for a moment, watching the construction ships work on the quantum gate. I think they wanted someone to carry on their work. Someone who wouldn't be content with just maintaining what they'd built. Someone like us. Someone exactly like us, Wu said. Someone who looks at the impossible and says, let's try anyway. Outside the window, the Defiance was preparing for another patrol mission. The great ship moved with deadly grace, its quantum engines leaving trails of light in the darkness. It was beautiful and terrible at the same time, a symbol of what humanity could build when they stopped accepting limitations. The Galactic Council had banished humanity to teach them their place in the universe. Instead, they had taught humanity that their place was wherever they chose to make it. And the 10 years had passed since the banishment, and High Counselor Zethkri felt every one of those years weighing on his foreshoulders. The aging Altarian stood before the great windows of his private office, looking out at the bustling space traffic around Nexus Prime. But instead of the orderly patterns of past decades, the scene below showed chaos. Ships of a dozen different species moved in unpredictable patterns. Young crews testing new technologies, trade vessels carrying goods between species that had never directly dealt with each other before. Worst of all, some of those ships bore the distinctive quantum signatures that everyone now recognized as human technology. The reports are getting worse, said his aide, a nervous young Centaurian named Veltar. 3 more worlds have requested permission to establish cooperation zones with the human domain. Zethakri's skin darkened with frustration. Cooperation zones were the latest diplomatic fiction. Since direct trade with the banished humans was forbidden, various council species had declared special economic areas where independent merchants could conduct business. Everyone knew those merchants were really domain agents, but the legal fiction allowed council governments to claim they weren't violating the banishment. Which worlds this time? Zethkri asked. Kepler Prime, the Vorthak colony at Sigma Draconis, and Altaria Minor. Zethakri's 4 hands clenched into fists. Altaria Minor was one of his own species' worlds. If even the Altarians were seeking human technology, then the situation was far worse than he'd feared. Sir, Veltar continued hesitantly, there's something else. We've received a formal diplomatic note from the human domain. They're requesting a meeting. Absolutely not, Zethkri said immediately. We do not negotiate with banished species. Sir, with respect, they're not exactly banished anymore. They control 17 star systems now, and their fleet. Veltar paused, checking his datapad. According to our intelligence reports, their fleet could match our border patrol forces in a direct engagement. Zethkri turned away from the window, his blue skin now almost black with anger. They're still just humans. One species against 47. They can't possibly threaten the entire council. Before Veltar could respond, an emergency alert chimed through the office. The main display activated automatically, showing the face of Admiral Kethran, the council's military commander. "High Counselor," Kethran said, his reptilian features tight with concern. "We have a situation developing in the Outer Rim. The exploration fleet Epsilon has encountered unknown vessels." "What kind of unknown vessels?" Zethkri demanded. "Human vessels, sir. But not like anything in our database. They're offering assistance." Zethkri felt a chill run through his body. "Patch me through to the fleet commander immediately." The display shifted to show Captain HFY, a Zephyrian officer commanding the exploration vessel Seeker of Truth. Behind him, Zethkri could see the bridge crew moving with barely controlled panic. "Captain, report your status," Zethkri ordered. "High Counselor, we encountered a quantum storm 3 days ago. Our navigation systems are damaged and we're lost. We sent a distress signal, but we're too far from council space for rescue." HFY paused, his feathers ruffling with nervousness. Then the humans appeared. "How many ships?" "One, sir. A vessel calling itself the New Horizon. They've offered to guide us to safety." Zethkri's mind raced. The Outer Rim was thousands of light years from known human territory. How had they gotten so far so fast? "Captain, under no circumstances are you to accept human assistance." "That's a direct order." "Sir," HFY said carefully, "with respect, we're facing a choice between possible human contamination and certain death. My crew has families." Before Zethkri could respond, a new voice cut into the transmission. It was calm, professional, and unmistakably human. "High Counselor Zethkri, this is Captain Zara al-Rashid of the human domain vessel New Horizon. We meet again." Zethkri remembered that name. Al-Rashid had been involved in several border incidents over the past few years. She was one of the humans who seemed to embody everything the Council found threatening about the species. "Captain Al-Rashid," Zethkri said icily, "you are in violation of the banishment. Remove yourself from Council space immediately." "Sir, this isn't Council space," Al-Rashid replied. "We're in the void between unclaimed territory. But that's not important right now. What's important is that Captain HFY and his crew need help. We do not require assistance from banished species." "Sir," Captain HFY interjected, "the human captain has offered to escort us to the edge of Council space and then withdraw." "They're not asking for anything in return." Zethkri felt trapped. If he ordered HFY to refuse help, and the exploration ship was lost, the families of the crew would blame him. But if he allowed human assistance, it would set a precedent that could undermine the entire banishment. "Captain Al-Rashid," Zethkri said finally, "what are your true intentions?" "To help," Al-Rashid said simply. "And to deliver an invitation." "What kind of invitation?" "The human domain would like to invite a council delegation to visit New Geneva, to see what we've built, to discuss the future of this galaxy." Zethkri's skin flickered between blue and black. "The council does not negotiate with—" "Sir," Al-Rashid interrupted gently, "the galaxy has changed. You can keep pretending we don't exist, but that's getting harder every day. Half the young people in council space are wearing clothes made from domain textiles. Your own intelligence services are using quantum communication arrays based on our technology. Your trade routes are shifting to avoid our territory because our ships are faster and more efficient." She paused, letting her words sink in. "You banished us 10 years ago because you thought we were dangerous. You were right, but not in the way you expected. We're dangerous because we prove that things can be better. We're dangerous because we show other species that they don't have to accept the way things have always been." Zethkri was quiet for a long moment. Around him, his aide and the military officers waited for his response. "If we were to consider such a meeting," he said carefully, "what guarantees would you provide for our safety?" "The same guarantees we provide for everyone in domain space," Al-Rashid replied. "Respect, equality, and the freedom to leave whenever you choose." "And what would you want in return?" "Recognition, formal diplomatic relations, an end to the policies that are tearing the galaxy apart." Zethkri looked at the tactical display showing the positions of both ships. The New Horizon was larger than any council vessel. its hull crackling with energy patterns that his sensors couldn't fully analyze. But instead of threatening the crippled exploration ship, it was holding a protective position. "Captain Yexhai," Zethkri said, "accept the human escort. Return to Council space safely." "Yes, sir. Thank you, sir." "Captain Al-Rashid," Zethkri continued, "I will consider your invitation, but I make no promises. That's all we ask, High Counselor. We'll be waiting." The transmission ended, leaving Zethkri alone with his thoughts. Through his window he could see more ships arriving and departing, many of them carrying technology that hadn't existed when the humans were banished. "Sir," Veltar said quietly, "what are your orders?" Zethkri was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was heavy with the weight of decision. "Prepare a diplomatic mission to the human domain. Small delegation, high security. I want to see what they've built." "Sir? You're going yourself?" "If I'm going to decide the future of the galaxy," Zethkri said, "I need to understand what we're really dealing with." 3 weeks later, Zethkri stood on the bridge of the diplomatic vessel Unity as it approached the edge of human domain space. The quantum gates that the humans had built were unlike anything in Council technology. Massive rings of crystalline metal that seemed to bend space around them. "Incoming transmission," reported the communications officer, Captain. Al-Rashid's face appeared on the main screen, but she was no longer on a warship. Behind her, Zethkri could see what looked like a garden, with humans and aliens of various species working together. "High Counselor," Al-Rashid said, "welcome to the human domain. I'm honored to escort you to New Geneva." As the Unity passed through the quantum gate, Zethkri felt reality shift around them. For a moment, space itself seemed to ripple and bend. Then they were somewhere else entirely, surrounded by star systems arranged in impossible patterns. "My God," whispered the ship's navigator. "How many worlds are there?" 43 in this cluster alone," Al-Rashid replied. "All of them inhabited. All of them thriving." Through the viewports, Zethkri could see orbital installations that dwarfed anything in Council space. Ships moved between them in perfect coordination, their quantum engines leaving trails of light in the darkness. And everywhere, humans and aliens worked side by side, building something that the Galactic Council had declared impossible. For the first time in 10 years, Zethkri began to wonder if the Council had made a terrible mistake. 5 years after the first diplomatic contact, the Grand Assembly Hall on Kepler Station buzzed with nervous energy. Representatives from both the Galactic Council and the human domain gathered for the signing of what historians would later call the Kepler Accords, the treaty that would reshape the galaxy forever. Dr. Elena Vasquez, now in her 70s but still sharp as a laser, stood at the ceremonial podium. Around her, delegates from 53 different species waited in carefully arranged sections. The old council representatives sat on one side, while domain delegates occupied the other. But scattered throughout were the newer faces, species that had emerged from the chaos of the past 15 years, independent worlds that had chosen their own paths. 15 years ago, Vasquez began, her voice carrying clearly through the hall's advanced acoustics, humanity was banished from this galaxy's community of species. We were told we were too dangerous, too chaotic, too unwilling to accept the way things had always been. High Counselor Zethkri, now showing his age but still dignified, shifted uncomfortably in his floating chair. Beside him sat Counselor Veltar, who had risen to become one of the Council's most progressive voices. The Council was right, Vasquez continued, causing murmurs to ripple through the assembly. We were dangerous, but not in the way they feared. On the domain side of the hall, Admiral Marcus Chen, now Lord Admiral of the Combined Fleets, watched the proceedings with satisfaction. His hair had gone completely white, but domain longevity treatments had kept him sharp and strong. Beside him, Captain Zara al-Rashid wore the insignia of the domain's diplomatic corps, a career change that would have amused anyone who knew her reputation. We were dangerous because we proved that change was possible, Vasquez said. We were dangerous because we showed that the galaxy didn't have to stay the same forever. The past 5 years had been a whirlwind of transformation. After Zethkri's visit to New Geneva, word had spread quickly through Council space about what the humans had built. The rigid hierarchies that had maintained galactic peace for millennia began to crack under pressure from younger generations who wanted the opportunities, They saw in domain space. Some council worlds had declared independence outright. Others had negotiated new relationships with their parent governments, demanding greater autonomy and the freedom to trade with the domain. A few had requested full membership in the expanding Human Confederation. The changes hadn't been without conflict. 3 border wars had erupted when conservative council factions tried to prevent defections. But domain forces, equipped with ancient quantum technology and human tactical doctrine, had proven impossible to defeat in conventional warfare. More importantly, the wars had been brief. Domain policy was clear. They would defend anyone who asked for protection, but they wouldn't conquer territory or impose their system on unwilling populations. The goal was never to destroy the council, but to force it to evolve. The Kepler Accords, Vasquez continued, represent a new understanding between our peoples, not the submission of one to the other, but true partnership between equals. The treaty itself was a masterpiece of compromise. The Galactic Council would remain as a confederation of worlds that chose traditional stability and careful progress. The human domain would continue as an alliance of species committed to rapid advancement and individual freedom. Most importantly, both sides would respect each other's choices and work together on issues that affected the entire galaxy. Trade routes would be opened between the 2 regions. Joint exploration missions would push into the unexplored reaches beyond both territories. Scientific research would be shared, though each side could keep military applications secret. Most revolutionary of all, individual worlds and species could choose to change sides if their populations voted for it. The galaxy would become truly voluntary for the first time in thousands of years. The first signature, Vasquez announced, belongs to the founder of the human domain, Admiral Marcus Chen. Chen stood slowly, his movements careful but confident. As he walked to the signing table, holographic cameras captured every moment for broadcast across the galaxy. With a pen made from crystal and metal, a gift from the ancient civilization that had made it all possible, he signed his name to the treaty. One by one, the other signatories followed. Zethkri signed for the Galactic Council, his 4 hands steady despite his obvious reluctance. Veltar signed for the Progressive Coalition of Council Worlds. Captain Al-Rashid signed for the domain's diplomatic corps. But the most significant signature came from an unexpected source. Ambassador Vexhai, the same Zephyrian who had testified against humanity 15 years earlier, approached the table. He now represented the Independent Worlds Alliance, 17 systems that had left the Council but hadn't joined the domain, choosing instead to forge their own path. On behalf of the free peoples of the galaxy, Vexhai said as he signed, "I pledge our commitment to this new age of cooperation." As the ceremony concluded, delegates began mingling in the reception area. The sight would have been impossible to imagine 15 years earlier. Humans and aliens from different factions talking freely, sharing ideas, making plans for joint ventures. Dr. James Wu, now Director of Ancient Technology Research, found himself in conversation with a group of young Altarian scientists. They were discussing plans for a joint expedition to explore newly discovered ruins in the galactic core. The energy signatures suggest technology even more advanced than what we found in the Kepler drift, Wu explained. But it's going to take teams from multiple species to fully understand it. Minister Elena Santos, recently re-elected for her 3rd term as domain president, watched the interactions with satisfaction. The domain had evolved too over the past 15 years. What had started as a human refuge had become a true multi-species confederation, with non-human voices playing increasingly important roles in government. "Penny for your thoughts," said a familiar voice behind her. Santos turned to find Vasquez, approaching with 2 glasses of Centaurian wine. "Just thinking about how far we've come," Santos replied, accepting the drink. "Do you ever miss the old days? When it was just us against the galaxy?" Vasquez smiled. "Sometimes. It was simpler then. But this is better. This is what we were really fighting for all along, the right to build something new." Through the station's massive windows, they could see ships from dozens of different species coming and going. Some bore the elegant designs of traditional council architecture. Others showed the functional aesthetics of domain engineering. Many displayed hybrid designs that combined elements from both traditions. But the most impressive sight was in the distance, the construction framework for humanity's newest project. The Explorer, a massive vessel designed for long-range exploration beyond the galactic rim. Unlike previous ships, this one was being built by a truly international crew. Humans, Altarians, Vorthax, Zephyrians, and a dozen other species worked together on the most ambitious exploration mission in galactic history. "Have you heard the latest reports from the deep probe missions?" Santos asked. Vasquez nodded. 3 more ancient sites discovered, and the signals from beyond the galactic edge are getting stronger. The ancient civilization that had left technology in the Kepler drift hadn't been the only advanced species to disappear from the galaxy. Long-range sensors were detecting structures and energy signatures that suggested entire regions of space, once held civilizations, that had simply vanished. The question was whether they were truly gone, or just waiting somewhere beyond the edge of known space. "Captain Santos Wu thinks the Explorer will be ready for launch within 6 months," Vasquez continued. Santos smiled at the mention of her niece. Maria Santos Wu had inherited the family traditions of both diplomacy and exploration, becoming one of the domain's most promising young officers. She would command the first truly integrated crew in galactic history. "Where will they go first?" Santos asked. "Beyond the void between. The deep sensors have detected artificial structures about 200,000 light-years out. Whatever built them was even more advanced than the Kepler civilization." Santos felt a familiar thrill at the thought of new discoveries waiting in the darkness. It was the same feeling that had driven humanity to leave Earth in the first place, the same restlessness that had made them such uncomfortable neighbors for the Galactic Council. But now that restlessness was tempered by wisdom. They had learned to build as well as explore, to cooperate as well as compete. The galaxy was wide enough for many different approaches to civilization. "Elena," Vasquez said quietly, "do you think we did the right thing, forcing all this change on the galaxy?" Santos considered the question carefully. Around them, the reception continued with the easy mixing of species that would have been impossible under the old system. Young beings who had never known the rigid hierarchies of the past worked together on projects that pushed the boundaries of what was possible. "We didn't force anything," Santos said finally. "We just proved that change was possible. Everyone else made their own choices." As if to emphasize her point, a group of young Altarians walked past, animatedly discussing their plans for a new art form that combined human musical techniques with their species' natural light-generating abilities. Behind them,